Hello, I'm John Connell, and welcome to this webinar with the Vintage Whisky Group. And I'm here with Sam Brooks, who's the founder, and also with Mike Webb, who's the Business Development Manager. And I think probably best, Sam, if we start with you and you tell us a little bit about the group and how you founded it and why.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having us, and good afternoon. So I started Brooks and Whitaker Limited, trading as Vintage Acquisitions, way back in 2011. So we'll be 13 on the 5th of September.
Goodness, I had no idea you were been going so long.
Yeah. And we started trading all luxury drinks. So it was fine wine, cognac, whiskey, port, Madeira, rum, anything that was old and rare.
So whiskey was just one part of it?
Whiskey was just one part of it, yeah. And I've always been fascinated by all alcoholic drinks and their production and the history behind them and how a number of them were made by accident. And so it's always been a passion of mine. And then we were members of LiveX, which is a trading platform, business to business on the fine wine side. And basically, in about sort of 2012, 2013, we migrated purely into whiskey because a lot of our clients were buying for an investment.
Yeah.
And that posed the best potential for our clients. Wine had sort of flatlined really after about sort of 2011, 2012. Then we got introduced into cask whiskey in about 2014.
And storing whiskey in casks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's buying casks full of whiskey from distilleries in Scotland, all single malt, and basically it went from there. We just naturally migrated into just purely selling whiskey casks to our clients.
And you store them all in Campbelltown, is that right, in Scotland?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so we've got our own bonded warehouse in Campbelltown in Scotland in a place called Machrihanish. And when it's fully complete and stocked, it will store 37,500 casks of whiskey. So that will give our clients full autonomy over their cask. But yeah, we've got a number of different companies now, all within whiskey. So in 2020, we set up Vintage Bottlers, which is our award-winning independent bottling company. We've got the Vintage Whisky Club, which is our whiskey events company, that everybody that purchases a cask gets enrolled into the Vintage Whisky Club. And we do things throughout the sporting and social calendar with like-minded whiskey enthusiasts and whiskey investors. And we've also got Campbelltown Bond, where people can come and visit their cask and draw samples from it, enjoy it with family and friends. And
so you're investing in a sort of experience as well as just in a...
Absolutely, yeah. We want to offer a 360 approach to whiskey, where people can buy a cask through us, they can store it with us, they can have a bit of fun through the club and enjoy, some really bespoke and exclusive events that we do with like-minded people. And also put the whiskey into glass, bottle it at the end, should they so wish.
If they wish to.
Absolutely.
So, Mike, why is it a good idea to invest in whiskey? I mean, why does it make sense to do that rather than, say, buy shares or invest in wine?
No, sure. I mean, by way of background, my kind of background is 35 years of chartered financial planning. So I come very much from a regulatory angle on this. A good advisor will always tell you not to put your eggs in one basket, tell you to diversify, tell you to look at different asset classes, because of course the problem is if you do put your eggs in one basket and it's the wrong one at the wrong time, then you're in trouble. So diversification is really key, part of core financial planning. And whiskey, unlike traditional investments, has a very steady growth curve. From the date the liquid is put into the cask to its 10th birthday is very slow and steady. From the 10th birthday through the signature years, 12, 15, 18, 20, we see real exponential growth. Now, that sounds wonderful, and that sounds very unlike traditional investments, but there is also a tax advantage to whiskey that is very unique. Because whiskey is classed a wasting chattel by HMRC, it is therefore capital gains tax exempt.
Wasting chattel means it's sort of got a limited life? Is
exactly that. It has a lifespan of less than 50 years. And there's a few things that will come under that banner. But as we all know, very few things are given away in tax regimes. And very happily, whiskey cask investment. And that legislation's been around since 92. So we've seen governments come and go. It's been around for 32 years, unlikely to change because it's such a bespoke market. And whisky is worth £7.2 billion a year to the UK economy. So we're quite confident that nothing's going to change.
And you've got a very international market, haven't you? I mean, whiskey's not just drunk in Britain; it's drunk all over the world increasingly. Is that
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. It's drunk all over the world. It's produced all over the world.
So where are your biggest customers? I mean, where do you find most of your customers?
It's a real good spread, to be honest, but Europe is huge for us. In fact, France, up until a few months ago, were the largest importer of Scotch whisky. They've been taken over now by India. I think Mike's got a few statistics on that. But we deal with people over in the Far East. We deal with people in the States. We've got some clients in Mexico. We've got, it really is all over. There's obviously a language barrier. We don't have a huge amount of bilingual people that work for us, but so therefore the UK and Europe is probably our biggest market.
The biggest market.
Yeah.
And so if I'm wondering whether I should invest in wine, Mike, or whiskey, what's the advice? I mean, is it difficult to make that decision? Do you think whiskey's a better investment than wine now?
I think this is a really good question, and one that probably Sam and I will share because of his history with the whiskey business. But to me, the numbers are pretty startling. We have a lot of clients that have invested historically in wine. The real difference is plain and simple, and it's exclusivity, really. Single malt Scotch is produced in one country on one continent. Wine is produced in 5 continents in massive bulk. To put it in perspective, 440 million litres of Scotch is produced annually.
In Scotland?
In Scotland.
It's amazing. Why does nobody else produce whiskey? It's extraordinary.
This figure will blow you away. So in terms of wine, so 440 million litres of whiskey versus 26 billion litres of wine.
Wow.
And of course the care, the robustness of whiskey casks. I mean, Sam will talk a bit more about this, but whiskey and wine are very different to take care of.
Yeah. Wine is matured for 2 years in the barrel, or the barrique in France, and then it's matured in the bottle. So as long as it's cellared correctly, it will continue to mature in the bottle because of the lower alcohol content. But it has to be kept in the right light conditions, no natural light, no vibration. It has to be kept in the right temperature, the right humidity. But even with all of those factors in place, a case of wine or a bottle of wine can still be corked, where it can get oxidized by an inferior cork, say, for instance, or just for reasons unknown. Whiskey's completely different. It ages and it matures in the cask. As soon as it's put into glass, it stops maturing. So you could have a 1980 bottle of whiskey that was distilled in 1980, bottled in 1990. Even today, it's still only a 10-year-old whiskey. It will always be a 10-year-old whiskey. So all of the maturation is done inside the cask. And whiskey, by its pure nature, can't help but improve the longer it's held in the cask. But the older it gets, the rarer it becomes, and that just naturally pushes the price up.
So if you look back, say, five years, would it be the case that wine sort of goes up and down a bit, whereas whiskey's been pretty steady and an upward curve? If I was an investor with you, would I be fairly sure that I was going to get a pretty even return over those years? So
it's a really, really good question. So, for instance, as Mike was saying about the quantities that there are of wine out there, if you take, for instance, the big Bordeaux clarets, there's a chateau called Chateau Lafite Rothschild. They produce between sort of 30 and 40,000 cases per year. Okay, good vintages, bad vintages, and obviously within those cases there's 12 bottles. But with most Bordeaux wines, they have to be matured for about 20-25 years before they're even ready for drinking, before they reach their drinking window. So therefore, you could buy a case of wine, but the stock of that wine isn't going to reduce really significantly until it reaches its drinking window, which is sort of 20-25 years. So yes, there is a fluctuation. Obviously, we're not regulated by the FCA, so we're not allowed to give predictions or forecasts. However, we do work by a rule of thumb that all casks that we trade should double in value between 5 and 10 years old. Some double in value in a shorter period of time, some take slightly longer. But over the last...
So I should double my money in 5 to 10 years?
You should do, yeah. I mean, obviously, we've only got the past to go by, and we've been trading the last 13 years, and we've seen that rule of thumb to be incredibly accurate. But the past is no reflection of the future, obviously. But as long as people keep drinking whiskey, and as Mike says, you know, there's only 148 active distilleries in Scotland, which is really, you know, sort of the mecca of whiskey production, I would say, in my opinion. Yeah, I think the future's bright.
Well, I was brought up near one of them in Pitlochry.
There you go. There you go.
I know all about these distilleries. So, I have some shares now in your company, and I want to sell them. How easy is that? Is it difficult to find buyers? And
it wouldn't be shares. It would be
it
would be cask of whiskey. You
cask.
actually
I don't own shares.
No, you own the whole
Yeah.
thing, and it's yours. The whole thing is yours.
So I have a cask, or I own a cask or a part of a cask.
No, you own the whole thing.
Cask.
Yeah, we don't sell parts of cask.
So you have to have a whole cask.
Yeah, you buy a whole cask of whiskey, all from distilleries.
So there's a minimum amount you'd have to invest, presumably.
Well, there's no minimum price tag to what you can put in. It really comes down to the lowest price cask that we have on our stock list at the time. And we're stockists, we're not brokers. Yeah. So we hold between £2 and £3 million worth of whiskey.
And so what would an average cask cost?
I mean, they can start from anywhere between sort of about £2,000, £2,500, and they go up to, I mean, goodness, sky's the limit. You know, one sold a couple of years ago for 16 million.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an Ardbeg 1975 cask. Yeah.
Must be very expensive in
yeah.
So if I want to, I own a cask and I want to sell it. Is that an easy process? Is it very easy to find buyers?
Yeah, it's a very, very simple process. You give us a call. We value that cask, and we give you a price on that cask. And if you're agreeable, then the money's in your account within 24 hours. If you've held that cask for a number of years, we might ask that you get the cask re-gauged, which is like a health check, an MOT for the cask. Because casks are made of wood and wood is porous, it allows the spirit to breathe. And some of your listeners might have heard of something called the angel's share, which is the natural evaporation that happens inside all whiskey casks. Can be anything up to 2% per year, but it's very rarely as much as that. And so we would get it re-gauged to see how much evaporation had happened. Because ultimately,
somebody goes along into and has a look in the cask.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a physical process. Yeah, they go with a hydrometer, they take the bung out of the cask, they test the strength of the alcohol by volume, the ABV percentage. They normally weigh the cask full. They then empty it of its contents into a tank, weigh it again, and that will give them the bulk litres that are inside, and then they calculate the litres of pure alcohol, and that's how you value a cask.
On the regulation side, you mentioned that earlier. Just tell us a little bit about that, Mike, and how that works with relation to whiskey.
No, sure. It's a really relevant point because most people that approach us are talking about a new commodity. It's something that's totally new to them. They're skiing a little bit off-piste. Whiskey essentially isn't regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Sam mentioned that, and there's a very good reason why it isn't. And that is because it's not linked to markets or indices. We know the date the liquid is put in the cask. That's the birthday, the AYS, the age of the youngest spirit. And every subsequent birthday, the cask grows in value. How much that grows depends on variables. And we'll probably talk about some free trade agreements and stuff, historic stuff that's having an impact on clients with portfolios now. Now, although it's not regulated, cask whiskey investment is strictly licensed. So it's licensed by HMRC and ultimately Her Majesty's Treasury. So there are very strict rules. There are licenses that are incredibly difficult to come by. So we hold a whole series of HMRC accreditation licenses that allow us to act as a cask custodian on behalf of clients, because clearly cask care is of optimum importance. So it's very much an armchair investment for a purchaser. If anyone's out there thinking, well, if I buy a cask, what happens? Where does it go? We take care of every aspect of the process end to end.
Yeah. And did you say there were other things that we have to consider that are coming down the pipe?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sam talked about our sort of broad brush in 5 to 10 years, your money will double. What we're actually seeing recently is that moving from 10 nearer to 5. And there's variable reasons for that. So in the last 2 years, the trade tariffs in Canada, Australia and America have gone to net zero. And that's obviously had a massive impact on supply and demand of casks. Now, interestingly, the biggest consumer of whiskey worldwide is India. India drinks 50% of all worldwide production of whiskey, which is astonishing. Only 2% of that is single malt Scotch, and the reason for that is they pay 150% tax on import. Sam and I and several of our colleagues at the Vintage Whisky Group are on the 4th round, sat in Parliament of roundtable agreements, looking to get that 150% duty tiered down to a net zero over a period of years, and that will have a huge impact on the market worldwide.
Yeah. Interesting. So, looking now at the fact we've just had this is a rather political question I'm going to ask you, but we've just got a new Labour government. The likelihood is that tax is going to go up, particularly possibly capital gains tax. Will that have an effect? Will it affect your owning a cask in the same way as it'll affect shares?
I think it will have a positive effect. We can only talk about what we know, and what we do know is that Labour has said they will not increase income tax, national insurance and VAT.
Yeah.
The two areas they haven't talked about, which are relevant to casks, are capital gains tax and inheritance tax.
Yeah.
Now, I do a lot of work with our clients. Capital gains tax for a high rate taxpayer is 20%. It's a huge, massive advantage when you buy a cask knowing that any profit you realise will not be subject to a 20% deduction. So that's a big factor when clients
But
are
so
buying.
you're saying it won't be?
It won't be.
So it won't be subject to capital gains tax?
No, but the implication is and we've all read it in the papers recently about potential tax raids on CGT and inheritance tax. If CGT and inheritance tax do get raided, then that's going to be a massive advantage for people holding portfolios. If CGT went from, say, 20% in line with income tax to 40%, then you've got a 40% head start once you've purchased your
So
cask.
the incentive then to move into things like buying whiskey, buying casks of whiskey will be quite large.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have clients from different walks of life, but we have a lot of clients that tend to be older that buy casks on behalf of children and grandchildren, and that's how they get a step into this market. Now, at the moment, we do a lot of work. You can use your gifting allowances and the use of trusts, variable discretionary trusts or family trusts, to actually gift casks of whiskey to those children and grandchildren, and then either immediately or after 7 years they'll come out of your estate. Now, that's 40% inheritance tax over and above your nil rate band. So that's a huge amount of money. And I quite often say when we're doing presentations and whiskey tastings, which we hold at our offices monthly, that it's a really difficult question, but would you rather write a cheque to your children or would you rather write a cheque to HMRC? And it's really as simple as that.
Yeah. So I can see the advantages. There's advantages, both steady growth, one hopes, will continue, plus capital gains. What are the risks of investing in whiskey casks? I mean, are there risks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really important to understand what the risks are in anything that you do and to do your due diligence. And this is one reason why we really wanted to come on here as well, is because there's a lot of companies, because the market's doing so well, there are a lot of companies that have sprung up recently.
Competing with you?
Doing
something similar?
Doing something similar, because of the market's popularity and because it's proven as a really good investment vehicle. But what's really important is to do your due diligence and hunt out the companies out there that have been running for a substantial amount of time, because not only will they have sold a lot of casks to their clients, but they will have exited them as well from the market, which is probably the most important thing if you're buying as an investment, is to know that exit strategy is a path well trodden. With regards to the downside and the risks, so whiskey is only legally whiskey once it's been held in the cask for 3 years in the wood. and as long as it stays above 40% ABV, alcohol by volume. Now, as we discussed earlier with the Angel Share, the bulk literage comes down every year due to natural evaporation, and so does the ABV. So we always make sure that our clients, we recommend that they get their casks re-gauged every 3 to 5 years, depending on how old the cask is. And that's keeping an eye on the evaporation. So one danger is that if you don't get your cask re-gauged and it drops below 40%, it's no longer a whiskey, and it'll be worth an absolute fraction of what it would be if it was whiskey. So that's one thing.
So getting it re-gauged, is that a costly thing to do?
Good question. Yeah, so that costs £85 per time that you have it done. Yeah. So it's
per cask.
Per cask.
£85 per time per cask.
Per time. So if it's every 3 to 5 years, it's not a huge cost, but it's definitely one that needs to be considered. Just on the costs as well, we offer 5 years free storage and insurance. After that, it's currently charged at £65 per cask per year.
Okay, so say I invest and I hold it for 5 years, a cask, and I want to know what its value is before I start paying for.
Yes.
Are you able to give me that?
Absolutely.
You would probably say I have to have a test, and then
yeah,
I'd do that, and then you'd give me what the value was, and then I might decide to stick in there, and you would then charge me. But I would have made a profit anyway, so it wouldn't matter so much.
There's so many different options. So lots of our clients purchase casks, hold them for 5 years, sell them, then reinvest into other casks, and therefore that 5 years starts again. So it depends on their circumstances and their sort of criteria for purchasing.
And how do investors, as it were, deal with you? Do they pick up the phone and chat to you? What's the normal way that you? I mean, as we know, most of in this virtual world, it's very difficult to talk to anyone. How do you do it?
No, it's an interesting question, but essentially we've brought a non-regulated product into a regulated environment, if you will. So on first contact with a client, we will get to know them. We will talk to them about them and their family, their circumstances, what their objectives are, how long they're looking to invest, what an initial budget might look like. But we will not actually sell a cask to a client until we're absolutely satisfied it's in their best interest. Cask whisky isn't for everyone, but really we match the profile. We would have an initial, ideally we like to meet people face to face. Second best is a Zoom or a Teams meeting, and we'll talk to them. So we'll essentially gather information, and we will go away and we will design a solution, and then we will offer written advice and recommendation as to why we would suggest particular casks are purchased. And at that point, the client can then engage and make a decision. They're under absolutely no obligation whatsoever. We like to build a longer term picture. So we like clients that will build a portfolio over a period of time at their own pace.
Yeah.
And a lot of that depends on things like estate planning. Are they planning for their children and grandchildren's future? Is it for them to supplement pension? There's lots of reasons why people buy, and part of our duty of care is to make sure that we do that, and we do that in a professional way. And really the company now, I call it HIT, but honesty, integrity and transparency are at the core and the heart of the business. Yeah. And we will be as transparent on every aspect of that purchase as we can be. And that's reflected in reviews of the business. And there's hundreds of them, and they're all exceptional, and we're very proud of that.
And how does this work practically? I mean, you have all these casks of whiskey, and you suddenly have new investors who need new. Do you have to buy extra whiskey, buy new casks yourselves? How does that work?
Yeah, another good question. So we've got access to. So there's 148 distilleries. We've probably got access either directly or indirectly to those distilleries. Probably about, I would say about 75, 80 of them, only because there's
you just contact the distilleries direct when you need
direct. Sometimes, yeah. I mean, just recently, we on the 29th of June, we went up to a fantastic distillery called Annandale Distillery in the Lowlands, and we took 100 clients up there, and they filled, I think, 59 casks on the day, which was a real fantastic event, exclusive event. So yeah, we've got direct relationships with distilleries, but we've also got them indirectly as well. And we purchase. I think we're the largest purchaser of privately held casks in the UK, if not the world. So people used to buy. In fact, there's a guy that we've just bought 2 casks back from. He purchased them in 1994 for £1,000 each. One of the casks, I can fill you in, we just gave him back over £300,000 for.
Wow. So 1994 to
so 30 years. Obviously, it's taken him 30 years, but even
he
so,
paid £1,000 and he's made an extra 299,000.
Absolutely,
God,
yeah,
I wish I'd done that.
yeah,
Wow.
exactly, yeah, and that wasn't the only one he had, yeah, but you know, he had the foresight to do it. He did it on a bit of a whim, actually, but you know, that's the thing. So we buy casks back from privately held investors, from distilleries directly and indirectly.
Yeah. So go on to on the benefits for becoming an investor with you. Do you get to go and visit you in Campbelltown, maybe taste your whiskey? Is that
Absolutely, yeah. So we've got, as I said earlier, we've got this 360 approach, and like Mike said, we love to meet our clients. You know, we've got an open door policy in our office in Bermondsey Street, just by London Bridge, 5-minute walk from London Bridge Station. We encourage people to come by and give us a knock. Don't have to make an appointment, just turn up. We've got a whiskey bar in the office.
In Bermondsey?
In Bermondsey Street, yeah.
Yes.
So
we're very disciplined in the office.
Yeah, everything's under lock and key.
Yeah, this is it. But people can come in, they can enjoy a dram. We've got the majority of casks that we sell. We have the liquid in bottle format in the office. So if people want to try before they buy, if that's something that interests them, they're more than welcome to do so. But yeah, there are other benefits as well. They can come and visit us at Campbelltown Bond. They can draw a sample from their own cask and pour it out and enjoy it with family and friends in a lovely tasting room there. They can get involved in all of the other events that we do through the Vintage Whisky Club.
Yes, I was going to ask you a bit more about that. The sports aspect and the other aspects of the club. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do all sorts of stuff. So we did a road to Scotland last year, which started off at Royal Blackheath Golf Club, and I think it finished at Royal Pollock Golf Club. We do.
So what does that involve? The road.
So we basically organised 3 different golfing events
on the way. Between those clubs.
Absolutely, yeah. With a number of different whiskey investors and whiskey enthusiasts. We enjoyed a bit of whiskey. Everybody got a hip flask full of something quite special, and we had a good time. We also do a lot of the international rugby fixtures. We are always at Murrayfield, unfortunately, for the Calcutta Cup, which we always tend to lose. Exactly, but what a fantastic atmosphere! There's nowhere like Murrayfield. Very, it's great, and especially against the English. It's brilliant atmosphere. And we do the international rugby fixtures at Twickenham. We're the Financial Times trusted partner, so we do their festival at Kenwood House. We do all sorts of stuff. Salon Privé, which is like a supercar thing. We've got events throughout the social calendar.
Yeah. So, wrapping it up really in a moment, I think. But just, Mike, are there any benefits that perhaps we haven't talked about today that you'd like to just mention?
The biggest benefit that's come out for me today was the guy who bought the cask for £1,000 and got 300,000 back and saved himself £60,000 of capital gains tax. I think that's a fair.
So he didn't pay any capital gains tax?
No capital gains tax on that cask at all.
And is that the same with wine? Do you not pay?
Wine is slightly different. Wine has a slightly different rules around it now.
Tighter rules, less good for the
tax-wise. On the capital gains tax side of things. And I'll have to look into it because I think it's changed recently again. But it's something like if you make more than £6,000 profit capital gains, then you have to pay.
But this guy walked away with his 300,000 and he didn't have to pay any tax at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And presumably there are others who've also done pretty well over the years.
Oh my goodness! I mean, there's stories out there. There was a guy that bought a cask of Macallan for 5,000 and sold it for 1.5 million. The stories are endless.
Yeah.
Not all casks are going to do that. So please don't think that they will. And that was a long time ago. But it's a simple investment methodology. Whiskey improves the longer it's held in the cask, and it becomes rarer.
And what about you? Do you both enjoy your whiskies?
Love it. Yeah,
And
too much.
presumably you rather enjoy this. You created the company. It's been going from strength to strength. Presumably you would enjoy doing it.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. So I'm lucky enough I host the whiskey tastings once a month in our office.
That's the office in Bermondsey.
In Bermondsey, yeah, which I absolutely love. We also do tastings all round the world, different bespoke events, and I love it. We've been lucky enough with vintage bottlers, which we started in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. We've released 12 very ultra rare single cask releases so far. 7 of those we entered into the World Whisky Awards, and we walked away with 6 awards out of the 7 we entered, 2 golds and 4 silvers. So we are incredibly proud of the whiskey that we put into glass, and I'm the lucky one that gets to taste it. So
you too, I imagine. Right?
Yeah, I've been known. We recently put together a 1989 and a 1991 Macallan cask. Called it the Marriage. It's the only 31-year-old in the world. We had the launch party in Covent Garden. And I'm not a massive whiskey drinker, but I must admit I did try a few of those, and they went down rather well.
And you got expensive taste.
Feel very tempted.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But this is it. I mean, it really is a lifestyle business, and we can't put enough onus on the fact that it's not just about trading and buying and selling and auctioning. It is actually about the social aspect. What I find interesting, and I, together with another one of the partners, do a lot of the work on the institutional side. We're finding institutions and family offices are putting whiskey very much on their radar now. And that's going to have a byproduct because it's going to have a massive squeeze on demand for whiskey, and indeed the supply of casks.
And as you say, if the government change the tax.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If anyone reads anything about capital gains tax and inheritance tax pots being raided, that everyone who has a portfolio of casks with us are going to be doing cartwheels up and down the high street. Mm.
Well, I think that's a good note on which to leave it. Thank you very much. That's really,
you're welcome.
Interesting.
Just one question for you, John. You're obviously a native Scot. Do you like your whiskey? Do you like a dram?
Whiskey. Yes, I do. Yeah. I like the old dram. I have to be a bit careful.
Sure.
I do like my whiskey.
Is there
my wife too is very keen. She never drinks any wine at all, so
really?
she's very interested in this because she only drinks whiskey or gin.
You got any particular style that you like?
Well, I used to drink Lafroig.
Right, the peaty, smoky. Yeah. Fantastic.
For a little while I was a student, I was a barman too. So
brilliant.
A little bit about these whiskies. But,
good stuff.
But I have no idea about whiskey investing. You've taught me an awful lot today.
Well, so next time you're in Bermondsey, pop in and see us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks, John. Thank you.
Thanks.